What's up guys, Asian here again with another kind of theory crafting video, but also sort of a myth debunking video. And today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of sets that have been commonly kind of touted, so to speak, by a lot of casual players as very good, solid DPS sets. And I'm basically here to kind of tell you why that might not necessarily be the case. So, obviously from the title of the video, we have Alkosh and Undaunted Infiltrator. There are a few other sets that sort of fall under this category here. Mostly, we're taking a look at mostly Infallible Aether as one of them. But there are a few other sets that sort of still fall into this category. But the big three culprits that I've noticed are Infallible Aether, Undaunted Infiltrator, and Alkosh. So I'll be going over each of these three sets in turn to kind of explain why they actually might not be the best sets here. So we're going to start off with Undaunted Infiltrator. We'll move on to Infallible Mage since I'm on the Magsorg, and then we'll finish off with Alkosh and we'll explain why each of these different sets are not as strong as you guys might see, they might actually look. So Undaunted Infiltrator. Taking a look here at Undaunted Infiltrator, so this is a medium armor set that you can get from Arx Corinium. So immediately, right off the bat, the fact that it is a medium armor set raises a couple of red flags for me. First off, as a medium armor set, this means that if you're using this on a Magicka DPS, and this is very commonly recommended for Magicka sorcerers for heavy attack builds on Magicka DPS combined with like a lightning staff or something, because it's a medium armor set, you're going to want to wear them on the jewelry and the body. This means that I have an untransmuted version of the set here. You're getting the rings, your jewelry will be in robust. That means you're going to have to transmute them. So you're going to have to use 150 transmute stones to basically turn these rings from robust to infused, arcane, bloodthirsty, whatever trait you decide to run. 150 transmutes is quite a lot. So if you just can give you an idea, that's 3 characters you have to get the tier 1s, and you'd have to wait a month in order to get the 150 transmutes, or you're going to get lucky and just do pledges every day, do your daily battlegrounds, do maybe Maelstrom Arena, a couple of pledges, your daily pledge coffers, for example. You might be able to get those transmute crystals through those methods in maybe 2.5 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. That is on top of farming for the rings and the weapons. So rings and weapons only drop from either chests or the final bosses. So you're going to waste a lot of time farming for this stuff. There are no unique drops that are lightning staves. I believe there is a unique necklace, but there's no unique ring that drops from Undaunted Infiltrator. So you basically have to go through the entire run here. And if you don't want to improve the jewelry, because jewelry tempers are still fairly expensive, you will want to do it on veteran to get the purple jewelries rather than the blue jewelry, again, unless you want to blow through it'd be the equivalent of about on PCNA roughly 80 to 100,000 gold per jewelry piece to upgrade them from blue to purple. And that also includes, before you transmute, you actually have to know the traits that you want to transmute the jewelry pieces into, which means you need to have access to jewelry crafting. So you're going to need to, have access to the Somerset expansion in order to be able to transmute your jewelry, even if you have the transmute crystals already. So all these pieces need to fall into place just to get this one set to work. You got to farm it, you got to transmute it, you got to have jewelry crafting available, all that stuff going on. You got to run it on vet. It's a lot of hoops you got to jump through for what we'll see in a moment, is relatively subpar set. Second thing that jumps out at me, even though you have 2 Max Magicka bonuses, you have a weapon crit bonus. That's not useful for Magicka DPS at all. We don't really care about weapon crit, so you're wasting 1 armor bonus, which is actually pretty important. The other thing is the Max Magicka bonuses, while they will help out Magicka DPS, it's actually one of the weaker armor set bonuses. The 4 different types of armor set bonuses you can have are Spell Pen, Max Magicka, Spell Damage, and Spell Crit. Out of those 4 bonuses, Spell Pen is one of the most useless because you're typically able to get to pen cap fairly easy as a Magicka DPS thanks to the light armor passive, which gives you some additional Spell Pen. Then comes Max Magicka. If you guys know the ratio between Max Magicka and spell damage, 10.5 Max Magicka is the equivalent of 1 spell damage. So if you divide 1096 by 10.5, you'll find that we'll be sitting at just around 100, a little over 100 effective spell damage. That's obviously less than the 129 spell damage that you get from your standard armor bonus there. Finally, you have Spell Crit, which in a Shadow Mundus meta with this sort of emphasis on crit chance, crit modifier, spell crit is really important as well, and that actually improves your DPS more than spell damage does on most instances. There are a few setups where your spell damage will actually provide more DPS, but generally speaking, spell crit provides the most DPS. Max Magicka, fairly weak armor set bonus. Now, what about the 5-piece? So that's what a lot of people say. The 5-piece is what makes this set so strong. This is why it's such a strong set. The heavy attacks and light attacks deal extra damage for 10 seconds when you use an ability that costs Magicka. Now, this might seem pretty good. So here is your typical heavy attack. So we're just going to heavy attack here. And there are 2 of them, actually. 2 full heavy attack bonuses there. Reset dummy here. And you can take a look at the hits here under the Comet Metrics log. Let me just take my fat head out of the way so you guys can actually see it. So here you have the Comet Metrics log. And you can see that our heavy attacks are hitting for 47 on the trial dummy here. And the final pulse is hitting for 6,800. Our crits is 8296. Our crit for the last is 39,940. So that is pretty much what you're seeing. Now the first hit is going to be, I think, a little bit weaker compared to your second 2 hits here. But you see here that all 4 hits are hitting the trial dummy. If we go ahead and activate Undaunted Infiltrator, we'll do the same thing. So we'll do 2 full heavy attacks. There we go. Reset the dummy here, and we're going to take a look at the numbers again. We can see here that our normal hit now jumps up to 7,031. Our critical hit for our doubt is now 14,414. Our critical hit for the final hit is 2111. So this is all because of the bonus from Undaunted Infiltrator. So we are getting a pretty hefty amount of bonus here. Not a lot, so 13,940 up to 14,414. That's only a bonus of about 500 or so. Or I should say 2111, I should say. I'm looking at the wrong number. Apologies. So it's a little bit more than advertised, probably because of various buffs and things like that. But regardless, you can see that it is affecting all 4 of our hits. And we are getting 4 hits per heavy attack. So take a look at Comet Metrics. 6 plus 2 is 8. So if you divide that by 2 again, you get 4. So it's 4 total hits in a heavy attack. Shock and Resto Staff heavy. So if we go ahead and take a look at the math behind this, we'll find that an alternative set might actually be stronger. So, going over here now. So we're taking a look at Mother Sorrow, which is probably the most comparable set here, because if you take a look at Mother Sorrow, it's an overland set, very easily farmable, light armor set, so you don't have to necessarily transmute the jewelry or anything like that. It's been out since the beginning of the game, so it's relatively cheap. It's still fairly expensive because it is a fairly meta endgame set. It's an endgame set that almost all Magic DPS run for endgame PvE. But this is probably one of the more comparable sets here compared to Undaunted Infiltrator. Again, dungeon from Arx Corinium, and you have to transmute it, and it's medium armor, etc., etc., etc. But taking a look back at the math here, I already took a look at the various crit chances, the Max Magickas. So with crit chance, with Mother Sorrow, we're sitting at 72.2% additional crit chance. With Undaunted Infiltrator, we're sitting at 55.8 crit chance. On crit damage, we're sitting at 105% additional crit damage. That's 1.05. Mother Sorrow only has 1 Max Magicka bonus compared to Undaunted Infiltrator's 2 Max Magicka bonuses, so we do have to take that into consideration. So Mother Sorrow gets 53,037, or 43,037. Undaunted Infiltrator gets 44,714. Spell damage is equivalent for both of them because neither of them have spell damage modifier, so 34,002. And so we just take a look at the differences here and calculate out our ability metric. So our crit chance is different, so we have to include crit modifier here. That's these 2 terms right here. And then we multiply it by our effective, in this case I use effective spell damage. So our Max Magicka is different, so we do have to include this term here, and then we just take that ratio. And we get a difference of 8.5. So Mother Sorrow is on the top, Undaunted Infiltrator is on the bottom. So Mother Sorrow is stronger by about 8.5% or so. Now we have 4 ticks of our heavy attack. So each of the ticks get the additional bonus of 1161 for a total of an additional 4644 damage. So we take this total and we basically create a ratio here, over here, with the percentage increase. So 0.0854. So we basically multiply the x over, carry the x over here, and we divide by the 0.0854. We get this equation here, and if we do the math, we get approximately 54,379. This is a turnaround point, at which point, if you're doing more DPS than this number, Mother Sorrow is going to be stronger. If you guys follow my build videos, you'll notice that I have a beginner Sorc video which uses Elambris, New Moon Acolyte, and Mother Sorrow. On that particular build video, using my rotation, you should be able to pull around 58 to 59k, perhaps 60 if you get lucky with some crit RNG. That's obviously over the 54,379. So for that particular build, if I were to replace Mother Sorrow with Undaunted Infiltrator, I would be losing DPS because my DPS with Mother Sorrow is above this turnaround point. So not an infiltrator here has a lot of hoops you gotta jump through to make it stronger, to even get it to use it. So it's a medium armor set, you gotta farm it, you gotta transmute it, etc., etc. Versus going with Mother Sorrow, where you can farm for it if you are lazy and don't want to spend money. I shouldn't say lazy, if you don't want to spend money, or if you're lazy and don't mind spending money, you can just buy it off of guild traders. Again, it's a fairly easy set to obtain because you can just buy it. The pieces themselves might be a little bit expensive, but for total, you can get all the pieces that you need, body or jewelry, for probably around 20 to 30k or so. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depending on what specific pieces you buy. Plus, there's a quest that you can do in Deshaan that'll give you an infused lightning staff of Mother Sorrow. So you don't even need to farm for the weapons. You can just do that quest on 2 different characters. You get 2 different lightning staves, and boom, you're done. You're all set. So, not really, no point in using no point in using Undaunted Infiltrator because Mother Sorrow is just so much easier to obtain and so much stronger as well. Not to mention that Undaunted Infiltrator is a flat bonus, so you're not really getting any additional DPS out of it. Mother Sorrow, because it affects crit chance, is sort of a percentage modifier bonus. So as you get stronger and stronger, you're doing more and more DPS, you're actually going to get more out of Mother Sorrow compared to Undaunted Infiltrator. Because Undaunted Infiltrator is a flat bonus, you're only ever getting that flat bonus at all times. You're never going to get more out of Undaunted Infiltrator as your DPS increases. Because Mother Sorrow is a percentage increase because it affects your crit chance, the higher your DPS becomes, the more damage you're going to be getting out of it. So Mother Sorrow is a stronger set. If you decide to go even further in endgame PvE, you're better off running Mother Sorrow compared to Undaunted Infiltrator. And that's Undaunted Infiltrator. Moving on to Infallible Mage. So let's go back to ESO and take a look at Infallible Mage. So Infallible Mage is also very similar to Undaunted Infiltrator in the fact that it is commonly used, recommended for heavy attack builds. So the 5-piece here, your heavy attacks deal an additional 903 damage, and enemies you damage with fully charged heavy attacks are afflicted with minor vulnerability for 10 seconds, increasing your damage taken by 8%. Now, a lot of people that I see recommending Infallible Aether, again, very similarly to Undaunted Infiltrator, recommend them on like Magicka Sorcs for heavy attack builds. Now, that Infallible Aether is a light armor set that you can get from Craglorn, so a little bit easier. You still have to farm for it, but you don't have to transmute jewelry because it already comes in Arcane. On top of that, it provides a lot of good armor bonuses. You have 2 spell crits, 1 spell damage, and Minor Slayer, all very solid bonuses. But that 5-piece bonus you'll find is actually not particularly strong. Now, the 903 damage that you get from heavy attacks is pretty much similar to Undaunted Infiltrator in the fact that it applies to all 4 ticks of your heavy attacks. But just like Undaunted Infiltrator, it's a flat bonus. So all we have to do is just change the equations up for the Mother Sorrow compared to Undaunted Infiltrator, change up the spell damage, change up the spell crits, and you'll have a pretty comparable version. You'll be able to figure it all out. You just have to change a few numbers here. But the big part is the second half of the 5-piece bonus, the minor vulnerability part. A lot of players I've seen were like, you get the minor vulnerability. This is pretty big. Not only is your heavy attack stronger, you get additional damage taken. Well, in a raid group, normally you'll have a Warden Healer. Warden Healers have minor vulnerability through Fetcher Infection or Growing Swarm. And because it's a named debuff, it is minor vulnerability, it doesn't stack on each other. So you're not getting 16%, you're just renewing that minor vulnerability debuff. So there's really no reason to run Infallible Aether for the minor vulnerability. That part is pretty much moot because Wardens are already providing that. Now, obviously, not all raid groups will have a Warden Healer. Maybe you have a Warden Tank, maybe you have a Warden DPS, in which case you're still getting minor vulnerability through Fetcher Infection or Growing Swarm. As long as you have a Warden in your group, you're getting that minor vulnerability debuff. So that takes away that minor vulnerability aspect from that 5-piece bonus. So you're just left with that 903 additional damage on each of your different heavy attack bonuses. Now, obviously, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but generally speaking, Mother Sorrow is still going to be stronger than Infallible Aether. But because that Minor Slayer bonus, if you're comparing it to like my beginner Sorc build, which is using New Moon Acolyte and Mother Sorrow, Infallible Aether might actually be pretty close to Mother Sorrow in that particular build, mainly because that Minor Slayer bonus. Now, I don't have the math in front of me, so I can't give you exact numbers, but if you're comparing it to just like a beginner build where you're not already using something like Sororia for the Minor Slayer, then yes, Infallible Aether is actually not a bad set. But for heavy attacks, you're kind of running into the same issue with Undaunted Infiltrator, where you're just getting a flat bonus, and it's not scaling as you get better, as you get higher DPS. So in that regard, Infallible Aether, the 5-piece bonus is actually not particularly strong. The other bonuses are definitely great. Minor Slayer, the spell crit, the spell damage, those are all great, but you're losing on that 5-piece bonus there, and that's what really kills Infallible Aether. So while I would recommend Infallible Aether over Undaunted Infiltrator, ultimately I would still recommend Mother Sorrow rather than Infallible Aether, because Mother Sorrow, again, is an overland set, so you can buy it, you don't have to farm for it. And if you want the golden jewelry for Infallible Aether, you have to do the Vet Craglorns. Now, the Vet Craglorns, at this point with the power creep, should be pretty easy. As long as you're hitting like 25k DPS, you should be able to clear the Vet Craglorns. But you would still have to farm for it. You would still need to, get the golden jewelry. You'd have to farm for the weapons, so you'd have to go through the entire trial, because jewelry and weapons only drop from the final boss. So it's still going to be a bit of a chore to farm for this set here, unless you get lucky and you have good friends who will give you any drops that they happen to get. The jewelry probably is the easiest part. The hardest part is probably getting the weapons for Infallible Aether. So again, I would still recommend Mother Sorrow, because it's the 5-piece scales off your DPS, so the more DPS you do, the more you're getting out of Mother Sorrow, compared to Infallible Aether, which is just a flat bonus. Plus, it's just easier to obtain Mother Sorrow. So those are those two sets here. Now for Alkosh, we're going to have to shift over to our Necromancer. Now, one of the things with Alkosh that I commonly hear from a lot of players is the fact that the dot stacks on each other. And it does, in fact, stack on each other. And I'll demonstrate it with the Necromancer here. But kind of running into a few issues here with Alkosh. And I'll explain them once we get onto the character, and you guys will be able to see the set. But one of the things that I commonly hear argued for Alkosh is the fact that, it's a medium armor set, therefore it has to be a DPS set. And that's not always the case. Yes, generally speaking, medium armor sets are designed for stamina DPS, and light armor sets are generally designed for Magicka DPS, but it doesn't necessarily have to play out that way. Alkosh has traditionally been a tanking set because of the additional spell and physical resistance debuff that it provides. But just because it's a medium armor set doesn't necessarily mean that it is designed for stamina DPS, or it is best used on a stamina DPS. So here you see Alkosh here. So the big thing here that people take a look at is the synergy activation portion of it. So you deal an additional certain amount of physical damage over 10 seconds. And this is what people say, well, Alkosh will stack on itself, so you get some additional damage out of it. So that's why it's so strong. Which makes sense to a certain degree. But first, let me demonstrate that it actually does stack. So here is just one use of Alkosh. We'll let it run completely out. Then we will reset the dummy and do another Roar of Alkosh, this time with Avid Boneyard, which is a self-synergy, so I'm able to activate 2 synergies. And we'll use that at 5 seconds into the first synergy. So we'll get a total of 10 from the first, and then we'll overlap another 5 on top of that. So here we go again. We'll get that first synergy. We'll wait for 5 seconds. 6, 5. Activate again. So we should get 10 total. So we have 10 overlap, the last 5 overlapping. So we should get 5, 10, 5. So we should get a total of 20 hits here on this second combat metrics report. So we go ahead and reset the dummy again. Take a look at our combat metrics report. Here you can see we got the 20 hits of Roar of Alkosh as expected if they did overlap, and over here we see we get 10 hits of Roar of Alkosh if they overlapped. Notice that the damage respectively has increased, has doubled, because we're getting, twice as many hits in. That seems all fine and dandy. However, one thing you need to keep in mind with the proc sets are the procs do not crit. So, and Alkosh here. So in this case 18,900, we did get a couple of buffs when we hit the target dummy. That will always stay the same. It is affected by CPs, it's affected by damage done, damage taken modifiers, but that's pretty much it. It doesn't scale off of weapon damage, doesn't scale off of weapon crit, weapon max stamina, anything like that. So it's always going to be doing that fixed amount of damage over 10 seconds. Might not seem like a bad thing. It's actually not terrible. However, think about it this way. You're getting a flat bonus. So like Undaunted Infiltrator, like Infallible Aether, you're getting just a flat bonus from the 5-piece. Now, take a look at Lakestes. Oh, where's my Lakestes? Lakestes here. Oh, that's weird. There we go. Lakestes, where when you activate synergy, you gain Major Slayer for 10 seconds. This is a percent modifier. Increases your damage done to dungeon and trial monsters by 15%. This means that as your DPS gets stronger, as you become a stronger player, stronger DPS, the amount that you are getting out of Lakestes increases as your DPS goes up. So it is always going to be more effective. It is always going to be improving your DPS. Alkosh, on the other hand, is a flat increase. So it will only ever give you that extra amount of damage, even though it can overlap on top of each other. So you can get multiple Alkosh procs happening at the same time. Ultimately, you're still only providing that DPS. So it's not really all that effective because Lakestes, because it scales off of your damage, will eventually do more and more damage as you become stronger and stronger. The Alkosh proc won't crit, it's not affected by weapon damage or anything like that. So there's really no additional bonus behind running Alkosh because that 5-piece just doesn't crit. Now there are some arguments for running Alkosh on Sunspire, and that's less because Alkosh is a good set, more because the tank is not in a good position to apply Alkosh on those fights. So Alkosh here is another one of those trap sets because you're not really going to see as big of an improvement with Alkosh compared to running something like the Kestes and just getting practicing activating the synergies. Both of these sets are reliant on synergies as well. So Lakestes lasts for 15 seconds, Alkosh lasts for 10 seconds here. And the thing with Alkosh is you kind of have to pay attention to when you're activating your synergy versus Lakestes, where it's kind of like, well, it's whatever, I'll just activate my synergy whenever I need to. It lasts for 15 seconds, I have 20-second cooldown on synergies. Doesn't really matter when I activate the synergy versus Alkosh, where you're going to want to grab your synergies bang, bang, bang all at once. And it only lasts for 10 seconds. So let's say you manage to grab 4 synergies all at once. Now you have to wait another 10 seconds in order to get those 4 synergies again all at once. So you're getting a large burst from the Alkosh damage, but then you're getting a pretty lengthy period of time where you're not getting the damage at all. So Alkosh might seem like a good set because the damage can stack on each other and, oh, I can provide the additional debuff. Well, the debuff, first of all, doesn't stack. It's only the damage over time that stacks. And secondly, you sometimes won't be in a position to actually hit the boss. Compared to a tank, which is always going to be next to the boss because it's a freaking tank. So again, Alkosh, while it seems good on paper, when you look at it in practice, it's actually not particularly strong compared to other options like the Kestes. Just like the Kestes, Alkosh, you gotta farm for it as well. So if you need the weapons and you need the jewelry, you gotta go through V-Maw. Lakestes, you gotta go through Vet Sunspire. And arguably, Veteran Sunspire is a little bit easier than Veteran Maw. There is obviously the power creep argument here, but I have found at the very least that Sunspire at the very least ranks a little bit lower than V-Maw when it comes to clearing, mainly because V-Maw has the twins and then the back room for Rakat, versus Sunspire, which, relatively speaking, is actually fairly simple and has easier mechanics to deal with. But those are the 3 big sets that I feel like are trap sets that a lot of people recommend to newer players, when they really should be recommending things like Mother Sorrow or just for completely forgoing Alkosh and just going straight for Lakestes. These 3 sets here have weaknesses that can't be overlooked. So I personally don't recommend running those 3 sets on DPS because of the weaknesses that I've mentioned here in this video. But let me know down in the comment section below whether there are other sets that you feel like are trap sets or other sets you would like me to discuss. Also, let me know down in the comment section below whether you agree with this assessment or not. But regardless, I hope you guys found this video informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.